Our International Entrepreneur of the Year honoree literally put his all into building a company he believes in. He's transcended boundaries, transformed an entire industry, and significantly contributed to the economic, social, and cultural development of our world.
We have always considered Patagonia an experiment in doing business in unconventional ways. None of us were certain it was going to be successful, but we did know that we were not interested in doing business as usual. We have no intention to sell out or to become a public company, which would compromise on our mission, to use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis.
Hi from Patagonia, my name is Gonzalo Muñoz, high-level champion of COP25, and mostly in this case, co-founder of Sistema B and Triciclos. That was the first B corporation outside North America and a company that was so much inspired in Patagonia. So I'm very, very honored to talk about someone who I know and respect so much. Yvon Chouinard from Patagonia is definitely a person and also a businessman that has inspired me for so many years in different ways. I definitely have the idea of Yvon being a business activist, and something that we have been using around in Triciclos, in Polcura, also the winery that I co-founded as another B Corp. We are also very well connected with the idea of Yvon's connection to nature, rock climbing and surfing, and in so many other ways he has inspired our work on connecting what we do on a very personal way and what we do in business. Definitely the legacy of Patagonia is embedded not only actually in the values of that amazing company that I'm so proud of participating in different ways by wearing it, but also by learning about it and sharing those values outside of Patagonia, so well expressed in all the B Corp community and the fashion industry that are hopefully trying to reach Patagonia's level, and in so many other ways where it's about the purpose that Patagonia is showing through not only what they do, but mostly, I would say, about how they do it. I would like to highlight this surfer, rock climber, this pioneer. The iconoclast is now also the 2020 honoree for the Henry W. Bloch International Entrepreneur of the Year Award. That makes me also so proud to be speaking about that, and so happy for Yvon, for Patagonia, and for all of us that have been following him for so many years.
I'm Ann St. Peter, the founder of Global Prairie, a purpose-driven marketing firm that is 100% employee-owned and, like Patagonia, a proud benefit corporation. And I am honored to introduce Vincent Stanley, the Director of Philosophy at Patagonia and a fellow at the Yale Center for Business and the Environment and at the Yale School of Management. Vincent was one of the earliest employees of Patagonia, and together with his uncle Yvon, the company founder, Vincent is credited with crafting the incredible story of Patagonia, as well as helping to chart its growth and impact on our planet. Yvon and Henry Bloch share so many values and a similar approach to business, namely a commitment to their employees, to their communities, and to leaving the world better than they found it. We are over the moon that Vincent is here to accept the Henry W. Bloch International Entrepreneur of the Year Award on behalf of Yvon Chouinard, as well as to share his thoughts on the power of purpose-driven business and B Corps in today's business world. Vincent, welcome to the Bloch School.
Oh, thank you for having me, and thank you so much for your recognition of Yvon and Patagonia's work. I'm really pleased and honored to accept this award on behalf of Yvon Chouinard. it's interesting that he gets an award for being an entrepreneur, and I think that that's very much defines him. He started making climbing equipment in his parents' backyard when he was only 18 years old. And he was making climbing equipment in response to a personal need that he had, and he and his friends had started to climb the high peaks of Yosemite and didn't have the proper gear to make the climbs. He was a responsive businessman, responsive to the needs that he felt. And I think that that's the best tradition of entrepreneurialism in America, one that Henry Bloch exemplified. And he had a kind of contempt for conventional business, that you would actually start an activity to go out simply to make money. That really wasn't a part of his character. He was not adverse to making some money in the course of keeping a business going, and eventually to using that business to actually improve the condition of the planet and to improve the condition of communities. So while he never viewed himself as a businessman, I think he has been proud to view himself as an entrepreneur. And we really appreciate the spirit in which this award was offered to him, and I'm really happy to accept it.
Well, Vincent, if you don't mind, I'd love just to ask a couple of questions. And the first is that there is no doubt that Yvon has had an unconventional path to success. As his nephew, and as I mentioned, one of the earliest employees at Patagonia, you've had a front row seat, not only to the growth and development of Patagonia, but also to Yvon's entrepreneurial journey. Would you share one or two stories about your uncle that stand out to you?
Yeah, so I'm 68 and Yvon is 82. So I'm in an odd position in the family. I'm actually closer in age to Yvon than his brother was. And I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles in the 1950s. And my family was not entirely conventional, but conventional outwardly, except for my eccentric uncle Yvon, who at the age of 18 and 19 was, I noticed, walking barefoot in the rain, and had in my grandparents' backyard a coal-fired forge, and was making mountain climbing equipment. And my first job for Yvon was at the age of 6 in 1958, expanding the blacksmith shop by 6 feet. So I held the plumb line while he drove in the stakes. That's kind of the first story. So I loved this company that he had created, even though I wasn't a climber, I wasn't a surfer. The second story I'd tell about him, which is really characteristic, is that when I was hired at the age of 20 to pack boxes and keep the books, I intended to stay about 6 months and then take the money and go travel. But I didn't surf, and the advantage was that for my business career was that when the phone rang, I took the dealer's orders. When the waves were firing, I was the last person in the office. And so after a few months, Yvon kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Well, you're sales manager." And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" And he said, "You figure it out."
All because you weren't a surfer.
All because I wasn't a surfer. But the "you figure it out" was very characteristic. And we once had another conversation in which he told me, I never get on anybody's case for what they do, for anything they've done, but I do get on people's cases for what they haven't done.
Patagonia sets the standard for so many entrepreneurs interested in becoming a certified benefit corporation or a B Corp including my Global Prairie co-founder and me. Can you discuss the path that Patagonia took to becoming a certified B Corp and what it's meant for the company and for you as an employee?
Yeah, it's interesting when the co-founders of the B Corp movement approached us in 2007, we turned them down. And our thinking was, oh my gosh, we do a lot of what they're talking about having companies do, and we're already audited for labor practices in the factories and for the chemical impact of the textiles, and do we really want to put ourselves through this? And what changed our minds was the second part of the B Corp movement, which was to create a legal category for benefit corporations. And we saw that as an advantage because we are a privately held company. And we thought, if any of the family members eventually want to sell stock, we want to be in the position of having our values really strongly written into our articles of incorporation and our business charter. So that's why we became a B Corp. But the benefits were surprising. I think what happens is when you go through the impact assessment, that is the only holistic look we have at how we affect every one of our stakeholders. And the fact that we go through that, first it was every 2 years, now every 3 years, that we have a picture in time. We're able to look at where we fall short, where we're doing well, and to work on where we want to be for the next assessment.
Do you mind sharing with us, Vincent, Patagonia's purpose, and describe a bit about the role purpose has played in the company and in Yvon's entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah. It's interesting because I think that we have a very strong purpose now. We adopted a new mission statement in 2018 that says we're in business to save our home planet. And that was Yvon's change. And I remember having my jaw dropping at the idea of adopting such an aspirational mission statement. But the truth is that the first mission statement that we had was build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. At the time we adopted it in 1991 was entirely aspirational because we hadn't done any of the things that we're known for. One of the things I noticed right after we adopted the new mission statement was the response from employees, which was, how do I bring my work in line with this mission statement? And everybody, really thoughtfully looking at that. And I think one of the things that's happened with us with COVID over this year is that the process of aligning our business with the mission, with the ambition of the mission statement, we probably cut 2 or 3 years off that process. It's one thing to have a purpose. It's another to question, okay, what good will this purpose create in the world? Mm-hmm. And then for companies that offer a service or create a product, we really have to focus on two things. One is, what is the legitimacy of our product or our service? And second is, how do we get it done? Yeah. What is done in order to produce this?
Love it. You and Yvon have authored 2 must-read books for entrepreneurs. In the first book, Let My People Go Surfing, Yvon said at the time, my company is an experiment. Patagonia exists to challenge conventional wisdom and present a new style of responsible business. Can you talk a bit about this notion of responsible business?
The company, I think, really was an experiment, particularly in the early 90s when we did become more purposeful. That focus has really been helpful ever since, but it's made the company less experimental because the more we've learned how to do, the more that becomes ingrained in the institution. And so I would say now we are almost 3 parts institution, a community of people and also part of the environmental movement and environmental activists ourselves, but less experimental than I would have thought in 1992.
Can you talk a bit about, you and I have had previous conversations where you said now more than ever in this post-COVID, post-George Floyd's murder world, the opportunity for businesses like Patagonia and other B Corps to truly make an impact is needed. Can you talk a little bit about
the world that of certainty, of reasonable certainty that we had for 50 years is changed. And now all businesses and all governments and all NGOs are faced with a series of recurring crises, of which COVID is one. The climate change is the second big one. So it now becomes incumbent on every force in society to deal with these questions, whether you're a business, an NGO, or a government. Business has to play its part, and business has a wonderful role to play because business has the capacity to be innovative, much more so than those other two parts of society. And if business has used its capacity for innovation for the past 50 or 60 years to make built-in obsolescence, or to make disposable products, well, now we can turn that energy, as that energy was turned to in World War II, to create tremendous capacity to achieve a singular purpose. Business can do that now to address climate change and social problems.
Well, that seems an apt conclusion, business as a force for good. And Vincent, please tell Yvon how grateful we are to him for accepting the Henry W. Bloch Entrepreneur of the Year Award for 2020. And know how grateful we are to you, my friend, for spending time with us today and representing your Uncle Yvon. We wish you and the team at Patagonia continued success as you light the way for so many entrepreneurs who really do want to lean into this notion of business as a force for good. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Anne, and many, many thanks on behalf of Yvon for giving him this honor.